Welcome to Real Estate and Money, a half-hour program on Rainier Avenue Radio World designed to help you whether you're a buyer, seller, investor, or renter in real estate. Your hosts are two local professionals who will escort you on your journey. Violeta Strash, who has years of media advertising and marketing experience and brings this extensive knowledge to John L. Scott Real Estate and all our clients. And Tina Lombard, who is a mortgage loan originator with guaranteed rate affinity, with over 28 years of experience. And now here's Violeta and Tina.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Estate and Money on Rainier Avenue Radio World. I'm Violeta Strash with John L. Scott.
And I'm Tina Lombard with Bank of England.
Yes, thank you for joining us today. We've got such important information for you. We've got Natalie Davis. And Tina, tell me again the full name of her title.
So Natalie Davis is a realtor here in Colorado. She is the 2023 president of the Colorado Association of Realtors, and that boasts over 34,000 members. So she's going to be here today talking to us about diversity and inclusion. So yes. Violeta, she is a lady that travels more than you and I combined. She travels all across the U.S.
Wow.
She travels across the U.S. and she talks about diversity and inclusion. And she's a personal friend of mine here in Colorado, and soon to be Violeta's in Washington State. And yes. she so kindly has agreed to talk to us about diversity and inclusion. And so me and Violeta, we want to talk to you really quick about why diversity and inclusion is so important. Mm-hmm. So V, like we were saying earlier, the history of Washington State for Filipinos, we weren't even allowed to buy property in Washington State. And it wasn't until the late 50s and early 60s where we actually went in there and started buying some property. And a lot of houses on the north side of the Ship Canal Bridge were off limits to people of color. Also in Seattle, Washington, there are over 10,000 deeds, very blasphemous and racist comments on the deeds saying that, you know, people of color, and it specifies Filipino, Vietnamese, Black, African American, goes on and on, how we cannot buy in certain areas. And they didn't even want realtors to show properties in certain areas of Seattle. So this is something that Seattle has actually triumphed over to a certain degree, and we've intentionally fought against this. And Seattle right now is a very, very beautiful, diverse place. It is so diverse, and we actually in Seattle, it's a show of victory on how Seattle is so diverse in all the different communities, because we actually fought that battle back in the 70s, the late 60s, 70s through the 80s. So V.
Yeah, and they're cleaning up the verbiage on a lot of the requirements, the laws around housing, and it's also the Fair Housing Act. And know, everyone, that the agents here in Washington State are required to take core classes, continuing education classes on fair housing, diversity. I know John L. Scott makes it a point to have all the agents attend those classes so we can serve the population better. And talking about population, Rainier Avenue is that zip code has the most diverse community in the country. How many languages did you say, Tina?
Here over 78 languages spoken in the Rainier Valley, 98118. So, you know, so I'm very proud to say, you know, there are so many different people, there's so many different beautiful cultures. And my experience in Seattle with realtors, it's such a diverse market. I mean, it really, really is. In any language, you'll find somebody in the real estate market. And there's so many different places in Seattle in which you can live, and you're really close in your community, or you can drive to any type of restaurant, any type of market, any type of place of worship. You have all these different communities in Seattle. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and know that your agents, me specifically, will take you to wherever it is that you want to be or need to be. We can talk about it when we have our introductory consultation, but people of color, gender, financial status, employment status, military. We've got a lot of military, and that's a very transient community right there. We've got a lot of people with various ethnic backgrounds in the military.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's something else. Because in Seattle, I sat by the Air Force Base, McCord Air Force Base in
Wow.
St. Louis, and soldiers come in every color of the rainbow. I mean, they just come in every color. However, people discriminate against the VA loan and vets, and it wasn't so bad in Washington State, but here in Colorado, it's something that it's quite a challenge. Even though
Wow.
I think it's the seventh largest military base in the U.S. A lot of lenders and realtors shy away or discourage vets to use their VA. So there's still a lot of work to be done here on this side of the market.
Yes.
So like I was saying, there are markets like Seattle or San Francisco or Texas or, Miami or what have you, where diversity is not such a debilitating thing when you're trying to buy property. But in parts of the U.S., like, such as Colorado, there are a lot of steps that need to be overcome. So you have to go out of your way to make sure you've got a lender and you've got a realtor who are fair in lending, and they're fair as far as housing is concerned. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I mean, unfortunately, in certain areas and for certain people, there is either a underlining aspect of discrimination, or it's just overt. We don't want you here. We're not going to give you that loan because we don't think you qualify. So there is a degree of severe discrimination and inclusion. And then there is another degree where people do not see color, race, or, they don't see anything different, and they just give you the loan in the transaction. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to bridge that gap and how to get your business profile, your business template in a such a way that there is diversity and inclusion involved in every transaction.
Perfect.
So, yes. So anyways, okay. So stay tuned. After the break, we're going to come back with Natalie Davis.
Tune in to Real Estate and Money every Tuesday afternoon from 2:30 to 3 here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Join your hosts Violeta Strash with John L. Scott Kent North and Tina Lombard with Guaranteed Rate Affinity. They'll help you navigate the waters of our volatile real estate market and offer you some guidance on how to make your hard-earned money work to make your dreams come true. Learn about current trends, get tips on financial matters, and have fun, interactive discussions about your home inside and out. That's Real Estate and Money.
Well, hello, everybody, and we welcome you back to the second half of Real Estate and Money. And we have our special guest today. It's Natalie Davis. Natalie is the 2023 president of the Colorado Association of Realtors, representing more than 34,000 members. And she's going to talk to us about diversity and inclusion. So, Violeta.
Yes, well, welcome, Natalie. I just am so thrilled to have you on board, and everyone pay attention to what she says, because this is for realtors. This is a core class, inclusion, right? Yeah. So Natalie will talk about all that and what we need to do as responsible real estate agents, and what our clients need to know about what our services are for them. So Natalie and Tina, take it away.
Yeah, so Natalie, thank you. Tell us really quick, what is diversity and inclusion, in case nobody knows about that term?
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Tina and Violeta. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit of insight and some of my knowledge in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that looks like within our industry. When we're talking about diversity and inclusion, and Tina, thanks for kicking us off by just touching on that. What does it mean? What does it look like? Because oftentimes we use the term simultaneously when we think about diversity, when we think about inclusion, and when we think about equity, and they're not the same. What I like to say, just to keep it simple, when we're talking about diversity, it's who we are, how we're showing up, right? The composition of the individuals that make up the company, the office, the communities that we live, work, and play in, that's diversity. And there's so many various social groups or identifiers that we can utilize when we're looking at what identifies us in terms of being a diverse group or a diverse population. The majority of the time we hear gender, so male, female, non-binary, or we look at race and ethnicity. But I think when we're talking about diversity, it goes so much further. Some of the populations that I like to remind practitioners to look at and focus on is when we're looking at people with different abilities, when we're looking at veterans, not just when we're looking at people of color, male, female, non-binary, things of that nature. Inclusion, I take it a step further. When we're talking about inclusion, it's creating that space where individuals feel that they have a sense of belonging. And I think as real estate agents, it's important for us to not only understand that we have a duty to our fellow practitioners, so our affiliate and strategic partners in the industry, other realtors that are in the industry, to make sure that they have that sense of belonging to practice real estate, in addition to the responsibility of making sure that the consumer has that sense of belonging when it comes to buying, selling, investing. We're there to be that trusted advisor for them. So creating that space that everyone feels that they have that sense of belonging. So I take inclusion to that next level. It's, do you have that sense of belonging? And then we're looking at equity. It's the services that are available, the resources and tools that are available, again, for our peers and for the consumer.
Right, right. So why is it important for us to embrace diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, great question. So, a few years ago, we had a report released from the National Association of Gay and Lesbian Real Estate Professionals. They surveyed a large group of renters across the country. And one of the questions that they posed was, would you be interested, or do you have a fear of being discriminated against in the real estate process? And there was nearly 50% of the people that were surveyed felt that they would not go through in the home buying process because they had a fear that they would be discriminated against by their lender, by their realtor, or by the people that lived in the community that they were going to move into.
Wow.
And that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one small subsection of our community that feels that they cannot trust the process to begin buying a home. We know that a large number of the individuals that they have fear that will discriminate against them have to adhere to the Fair Housing Act. So I think it's important for us to do a better job to inform the consumer that we have a responsibility to protect their rights to purchase a home if they're ready, willing, and able to do so. And if we do not inform and educate the public about that, we're going to leave so many individuals behind in terms of home ownership. And as we all know, when we're looking at creating generational wealth or just wealth in general for individuals, real estate is that primary source across the board. And so I feel that it's a disservice if we don't offer that same opportunity to everyone that's in our community so that we can continue to have the wealth grow and expand within our areas that we live, work, and play in.
Well, it's funny because, of course, I'm a double minority, woman and a person of color. And, I get why, home ownership and diversity is very important. And one of the reasons why they say on books, when you take diversity classes, is, it's a money thing also. You're absolutely ignoring a whole market there. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of opportunity. There's underserved markets that are not getting help. They're not being solicited. They're not being helped. They're not being educated on home buying. And so you're actually missing a giant part of the market, period. And I know that's the least reason why we want to have diversity and inclusion as an important option. But really, there's a lot of people who don't understand it. When I came to Colorado, I saw a great opportunity because there are a lot of underserved markets here, whereas in Seattle, it wasn't so much. So V, really quick, in Seattle, the market in Seattle, do you still see a disparity in diversity and inclusion?
Less and less these days because, we have to go through rigorous training as agents about fair housing and diversity and inclusion. And then for me, I try to make it a point to just talk to my clients and talk about what their needs are and not direct them in any way. And you tell me where you want to live and I will look in those places. And Seattle is getting better at this, I think, with my John L. Scott fellow agents. So that's what I know is my little world. And so we do make a point of talking about this a lot.
Yeah. So the thing is, Natalie, in Washington State, Filipinos were not allowed to buy houses for many, many years. And it wasn't until the late 50s, early 60s that we snuck in and started buying houses. And of course, there's a big population there now, and there are over 10,000 deeds and covenants in the city of Seattle that do have very racist remarks on the deeds itself. And they're looking to get that removed, but it's been years and years and years they've talked about it. So there is a degree of housing discrimination that is embedded and was the foundation in Seattle for quite some time. And so that's why they over aggressively try to go into the direction of diversity and inclusion. So in churches and in city halls and different meetings and stuff, they actually had an intention of tackling this issue. So here we are in Colorado, and it's an influx, it's a sanctuary state. So we have people from Ethiopia coming, people from Europe that are coming, a lot of refugees from all over the U.S. and they come here, and there's a certain degree of discrimination. You know, there's a lot of land here, and there's a lot of ground that has not been dealt with before, as you know, as opposed to the coast, where there's a lot of cities who've always dealt with immigration. So what do you see are some of the problems here right now, just in the state of Colorado, Natalie?
Yeah. So great question, Tina. So I think similar to V, I think we're constantly seeing progress and forward movement in terms of like the inclusionary business practice. Colorado, we don't have mandatory or required education around diversity and inclusion. So the work is truly voluntary. And so what I'm proud to see is that there are so many Colorado realtors and practitioners that are making sure that they're being proactive when we're looking at and creating an inclusive business practice. But we see, unfortunately, discrimination pop up in various ways. I often reference to making sure that we have an inclusive business practice when we're working with our peers, affiliate partners, other practitioners. There's discrimination that happens within our industry in terms of the business side of it. There's discrimination that happens, you know, between sellers and buyers and vice versa. Even though we have, for the most part, we have, or we should have, if you don't have one, a process in place to make sure, as V mentioned, if you have a client that has clearly identified where they want to live, the features they want to have in the home, we're there to show it to them. And if we happen to come in contact with a client, or we're working with a client that's making a decision based off of maybe one of the protected classes, or we know that it's a discriminatory decision that they're moving forward with, that we educate them on what our responsibilities are and what we can legally do and not do. And it's as simple as that, right? It's not, I think that agents sometimes get hesitant in saying that we have to uphold the Fair Housing Act. It's the reality. And we can just simply inform our clients of those things, you know, as we're working with them. And it's matter of fact. And we always, at the end of the day, have the choice. Can we continue to have that relationship with that client or not? And what will it look like? But for our communities, I think, you know, I have the opportunity to visit with so many realtors across the state, and the demographic across the state of Colorado, it looks different in every region. And so when we're looking at diversity within specific regions, I think, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, the conversation was more of, well, diversity is not something that we have to deal with in our area, right? And then as you start to peel back the layers, you have that realization of it is absolutely something that we all have to deal with, because it's who we are and how we're showing up. It's the inclusion piece, or that sense of belonging, that we have to be intentional about creating. So if it is based off of gender or socioeconomic makeup within communities, I think those are the biggest things. And I think another safe area that agents dabble in, I call it a gray area, is we're fortunate to have great schools in the state of Colorado. So when you have clients that are very specific and asking for the good schools in the area, that's when we start to get into that gray area, right? So just knowing that you have that dialogue, that script that's ready to go, to let them know, we have amazing schools, or is there something in particular that you're looking for? Let me connect you with the administrator. You do that research on your own. My skills, the reason that you've hired me, is to help you in your home search. And that's, you know, that criteria is completely separate. So those are some, I think we're much broader. We still have some racial restrictions within some of the covenants, but I don't think to the degree that we're seeing them in other parts of the state. They are present. And there are other restrictions that I've seen incorporated into HOA documents that they're not blatantly racially restrictive, but you can tell from the wording that they are very selective on who they would like to have move into the community. And we just have to tackle those, right? It's not a silver bullet, one hit wonder. We have to just keep doing the work.
So, you know, I was really impressed. I had the pleasure of being at a presentation with Natalie last week, and there is a principle that she brought up. It was called the One America Principle.
Yes.
Could you go through that really quickly and say what it is, and tell realtors how they can get a hold of that?
Gosh, yes. So if you are looking to truly be intentional about creating an inclusive business model, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're sharing that you have an inclusive business model. And I'll share just a personal example that I went through that was a big aha moment, that I said I had an inclusive business model, but when I was faced with a specific situation, I realized that I did not. So I'll come back to that after I talk about the One America principle. So during the Clinton administration, the administration discovered that there was still a disconnect between creating an inclusive business practice or even inclusive communities for home buyers across the nation, right? So it was a nationwide issue. And in an effort to address that, HUD and the Realtor Association came to the table with the administration, the Clinton administration, to create the One America principles, America.net, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, it goes through a statement to the general public of how we operate as practitioners, right? I welcome the individual and their differences. If you speak a different language and you should have a need, let me know. If you have special requests while we're working together, how can I best serve you? So it truly is a statement. It's available for us to use. It's at our disposal. I encourage realtors to take that One America principle, that those statements, include it in your marketing, include it for broker owners that are bringing on new agents, include that as part of your onboarding, and have the agents sign and acknowledge that that's how the brokerage is going to operate moving forward. These are free tools that are available and at our disposal. And it's a great reminder for us in how we're going to show up and operate. And it's also a great announcement to the consumer so that they understand how our brokerage operates and how we operate as a practitioner. And if you don't mind, Tina, can I share the example of when you think you have an inclusive practice and you don't?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So I always share, it's either my personal story or a story that someone has shared with me that's given me, permission to share their story. This is my personal story. I'm a licensed practitioner here in Colorado, and a few years ago, met a gentleman that utilizes a wheelchair. And in a setting, he asked, if I called you to help me with my real estate needs, would you be able to help me? Well, I know the type of car that I drive. One, I don't have the trunk space that would accommodate his wheelchair if we were going to look for homes. And I drive a 2-door sedan. So that was the first thing that came to mind. I thought, gosh, if this gentleman calls me, how am I going to help him? And it's not that I don't want to help him. I was not intentional on creating a plan in the event that I had a client with different abilities that had this need.
Right.
So I now know, and I've made the decision, if I have someone that has different abilities and they utilize a wheelchair, I would ask them if they're able to drive, right? And then I would be the passenger. They drive, we still look at homes. It's not that I don't want to help them with their real estate needs. I just didn't have a plan in place. And I feel like that's where a lot of our opportunity lands. We want to create this inclusive business practice, but it can't be lip service. Like, we have to make sure that we have processes in place to better serve our communities.
That's great. See, Natalie, I actually have the One America statement. I'm gonna be putting it up while you're talking, so
Perfect.
people know how to get it and how to refer to it. But thank you so much for joining us today. We're kind of out of time, but we'd love to have you come back and talk more in different specific areas of diversity.
I would love to.
Yes.
This has been
Natalie,
great. I appreciate both of you. Yes. Thank you.
Until next time. Thank you so much. Bye.
If you would like more information on One America principles, please go to oneamerica.net. There you will find more information and support of diversity and inclusion. Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this very important topic, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes. And I'm Violeta Strash with John L. Scott.
And I'm Tina Lombard with Bank of England, and we'll talk to you then.
You've been listening to Real Estate and Money with your hosts Violeta Strash and Tina Lombard. For more information, call 206-717-4490. That's 206-717-4490. Go to the Rainier Avenue Radio.World website to find the Real Estate and Money schedule, or tune in to our live show every Tuesday afternoon from 2:30 to 3. We will help you find